Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this out there on the World Wide Web. This is Jeremy Geelan for Syscon TV. We are at our 12th Cloud Computing Expo, and what kind of expo would it be without a power panel? Here in our Times Square studio, joined by 4 involvees is the best word to use. Involvees in the cloud and in Cloud Expo. Let's hear who we've got and what we're going to discuss. Of course, cloud computing, big data, and how they're transforming enterprise IT. So let us introduce ourselves, starting with you, please, Bruce. But here's what I like, if you will indulge me. Tell me what it was. It's great that you're IBM's smart platform, cloud platform director, but what is the most astonishing thing for you about cloud this year, 2013?
Thank you, Jeremy. My name is Bruce Otte, and I'm with IBM, a director of our platform services. And the most astonishing thing for me in 2013 is the number of large enterprises that are using cloud to literally transform their businesses with their traditional applications like SAP, and migrating that to cloud and standing up whole new business units in a matter of weeks.
And we're talking here and now,
2013.
Here
and now, exactly.
Not the future. Next. Same question for you, Lisa. It's great to know you're the VP of Enterprise Cloud Platforms at Rackspace, but what is the most astonishing thing that's happened in the cloud for you this year?
Thanks, Jeremy. Lisa Larson. I'm Vice President at Enterprise Cloud Solutions at Rackspace, the open cloud company. And the most astonishing thing for me is that hybrid cloud really provides customers the ability to innovate their businesses, and we fanatically support their underlying infrastructure.
See, she got it in there, fanatically support and hybrid cloud. So that's, we're going to be getting on to all of this. But again, it's real, it's now.
Yes.
Greg, I have to ask you the same question. It's one thing to be the CEO of AppZero, but it's another thing to be able to answer the question, what's been the most astonishing thing in the cloud for you this year?
So for me, the most astonishing thing is, most computer paradigm adoptions start from the top down. And I'd say with this one, there's sort of an invisible hand where people in IT are going out and using cloud computing, irregardless of whether it's a top-down driven compute. So there's this shadow IT. Lisa has an excellent presentation about shadow IT. So not only is there the agility expense from the top down, but there's a bottom-up adoption that's just not been available in other sort of computing genre platforms.
I like that. I'm sure we'll revisit that.
And I'm Greg O'Connor, CEO of AppZero.
Sounds very disruptive to me, that whole shadow thing. We'll get on to that. Last but certainly not least, Kevin Brown, CEO of Coraid. Kevin, astonishment, 2013, cloud, what comes to mind?
It's pretty amazing. This year we've really seen enterprise IT start to take it very seriously that either they're going to deliver the same agility, that same instant-on experience for the users, or they're going to be like that CIO that said no to your iPhone. And they're going to be career is over. So people are really starting to realize that the cloud is setting the agenda for how people want to consume these services, and it looks a lot different than the old boxes they've been buying.
All right, so that's who we have. Now let's get down and dirty. So let's just set really the overview for this time. Here we are, it's June 2013, and recently the CEO of VMware, Pat Gelsinger, had the inevitable thing. He's decided that we're at the 5th wave of cloud computing. I always love these things, the 5th wave. So he claims that we've done the mainframe, we've done the mini computer era, we've done the PC era. He says we're done with the internet era, which you might quarrel with, but the 5th era, 5th phase, the 5th wave is now cloud computing. So I have to ask you, is he right about that? Kevin?
So I look at it as the same wave that's moving its way down the stack. So first it was computing. You had big iron, at like SGI and DEC and Sun, and it got collapsed into x86, and you wrapped virtualization around it. Same thing's happening at the networking layer. You now have 10 gig ports that are available for $300 a port, and you're now wrapping software around it to manage the whole network as if it were one thing. Same thing's coming down to storage. And so now instead of big iron, you're going to scale out architectures that look a lot more like the big cloud, big web scale players. And so this is really transforming the way that you buy, but more importantly, the way that you deliver services, because you've got all of these boxes. You have a building full of very inexpensive commodity hardware. How do you turn that into a service? How do you get the right resilience and performance profiles that you used to have to go to a real big over-engineered piece of iron and a lot of consultants to go do? This has to be no humans in between the end user and being able to get the app they want. And that's a very different way of programming. You're really programming the building.
I like that. That's a good prism through which to look at it. Greg?
Of course he's right. It is absolutely the 5th generation, right? It's a duh, right? Everyone's really adopting cloud computing, and whether it's top-down driven, whether it's the hardware infrastructure driven that you heard here, or whether it's the people just going out and using it even if the corporation's not supporting it. So it's transforming how all businesses are bringing new products to market, how they're saving money, and yeah, it's definitely the 5th generation.
Safe bet, Lisa?
Absolutely. So I really think what's changing here is that the business is really driving cloud computing and adoption of that, not IT. It's really the business coming to IT and saying, we need services and you can't provide them fast enough. So they come to companies like Rackspace to provide those cloud computing services so that they can get faster time to market, get their products out there faster, and realize revenue faster.
Bruce?
Well, it's interesting. We have the 3rd wave, as Irving Waldesky has called it, right? We have the 5th wave, as he's calling it. But at the end of the day, the big factor here is the fact people don't want a computer, right? When it came out with the mainframe, it was all about the business process, accessing the services that you need to get your business done. And the whole idea behind cloud computing is make the IT invisible, make it easier for me, the end user. And so, we did that with the distributed compute world because not everybody knew the wonderful language of mainframe. If you had an asterisk instead of a question mark, it would blow up on you, right? And the same thing with the PC, the same thing with the whole idea behind the iPad and the iPhone and mobile. It's not that we want that computer in our hand, it's that we have to have access to the information, access to the processes to get our jobs done and to get accomplished what we need. And so cloud computing is just making that, as was referred to earlier, the invisible hand. It's just making that invisible in the background so that the end users don't have to think about it.
All right. Now, I think a lot of people out there, they're relating to that. That's resonating, and that makes sense. But then what about what you're hearing from all the analysts, which is, cloud computing's not about saving money, or maybe it is about saving money, arguing about that. It's all about saving time. Or maybe it's not about saving time. Where are you on that? Free for all. Who wants to take that? Saving what?
I'd break it down 3 ways. You've got CapEx, OpEx, and the 3rd one that I'd call time to money. So this is about how quickly can you get your application going. One of our big banking customers said they had a backlog of 800 deployment requests for storage at all times. So people have all of these great ideas, they want to put them to work, and they're sitting around waiting for old IT to get around to it because the boxes and the processes are very complicated.
Time to money is that's a great concept.
I'll add a comment. I think it's all about innovation. So I think that cloud is giving you the opportunity to go try things. You can experiment. You can go out and try a new product, launch something, not have to think about that CapEx spend, as you said, not have to plan for it, budget for it, go through that whole IT process of getting that capital expenditure. Go out there, try your product, launch it, spin up more services if you need them, or spin those down. So you're getting the time to market, and you're also getting the cost savings because you can spin down resources when you don't need them anymore.
So it's both. So this is not all irrelevant, the time.
Well, I think it's actually from the view of the end user, right? What's their perspective? If the end user is the IT person that is having to deliver these services on a more cost-effective basis because his budget's remaining flat or his budget's being cut, well, then it's about cost savings. How can I derive cost savings? If it's the business area that needs to launch a new product and get it out there rapidly, right, it's going to be about your time to value. It's going to be the research area and the marketing group that's going to want to do the experimentation. So it really is all of those, but it's really from the point of view of the person that has to get done what they have to get done.
All right.
And you have to know if the guy from IBM says it's not about the computer, it's got to be like one of those generational wage changes.
2013, it's arrived.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that would make it one of those wave changes is that it's really a broad set of values. So it depends who you are in the organization, what value you're going to get, whether it's the innovation, whether it's the CapEx, whether it's the guy who's just going off and running a project and doing it sort of as shadow IT. So the fact that it touches so many people in so many aspects that different values would be associated for them and be the drivers for them, and there's so many of them is why it's being adopted so fast.
Sure. Now, when this all began, we're going back now some years, this wasn't such an issue, but 2013 and 2012 have been very much about the next thought, which is the elephant in the cloud, Open
IBM.
source. He was fast. I'm going to go with open source, so you might argue that's almost synonymous. So what has been the impact on this whole space of open source?
Well, I think the biggest impact on open source has been the end user customers, right? The customers' desires to be able to not have what we would call a vendor lock-in, the ability to have that mobility, that portability, to take advantage of what's best for them in the market at any given time.
So it's another aspect of empowering them. So with
absolutely,
all this flexibility,
exactly.
they've driven
empowering
out
the company, and then the companies like IBM, like Rackspace, are saying this is the way to go because it gives you, Mr. Customer, the greatest flexibility, the greatest opportunity to be able to deliver what you need to for your end users, and then use vendors like ourselves to help and support and be your strategic partners in that area.
I'm going to break it down into 3 components. Very simple. It's the community, it's the ecosystem, and it's choice. So open is enabling developers to really innovate and provide more cloud services out there. Then you get an ecosystem that's going to provide those services around it. And then you have choice. So if you are an IT organization, you're looking at going to a service provider to get your cloud services. With open source, you have the ability, you don't like that service provider any longer, you can switch. If you decide that the economics don't work out anymore in a cloud service provider, you can bring that back in-house. So you have that choice to be able to move that application workload to wherever you need it.
And the notion that switching costs are nil, maybe we're not going that far.
Yeah, we're not going that far.
Hello.
We're not going that far.
I wouldn't even go that far, depending upon the application and depending upon what environment they're coming from. If you're coming from some traditional applications, the switching costs can be high. And so if you're going to do that switch the first time, you want to do it in such a way that then you have that flexibility and it's a lower cost later.
And then you're not locked in, right?
Exactly.
Well, there's another really key important area here, which is how do you not put just together a box, but put together a whole stack? Because to deliver a service in this cloud-like way, whether it's out on the public cloud or inside your organization, you need to very quickly be able to connect 3, 4, 5, 6 different vendors together. And the OpenStack movement and all of the support we've seen building for that is driving all of these players, who even the dominant ones who used to have lock-in on all their customers, it's forcing them to open up and allow them to connect all these pieces together in an open source, very flexible way. And so it does decrease the switching costs, but even more importantly, it decreases the cost of deploying a stack and innovating services and putting all these pieces together, which typically used to take weeks and weeks to do. Now you can reprogram that and get that done in a matter of minutes.
Right.
Yeah, open source is a vehicle to aggregate, all the different companies and create a broader platform that creates, more value for customers faster, right? So that's the vehicle to pull together a lot of different companies that will create a broader platform so there can be different applications. Just got to go on record and say that, some companies are there to lower the switching costs so that it'll be close to nil.
Companies beginning with A.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, from an IBM perspective, with our gravitating to and really grabbing that OpenStack and help build out OpenStack, we're working very closely with AppZero as part of that, and recognizing that that's the integration and that migration from point A to point B, be it old to new, or from, hey, I have delivery provider A, I need delivery provider B that may be on the other side of the world.
That's
but I've
really
got to be able to stand it up
ecosystem.
quickly.
I like
That's the whole
grabbing the
ecosystem.
OpenStack. I like that.
Exactly.
That's nice. Then let's think about a very simple question. I don't know if we've all got children, but a lot of us have got lots of children. And they're going to say, Dad, so everything's in the cloud, but where is it? And I can't really answer with data residency issues. But it does remind me, where are companies going? What do you all say to companies when they say, whoa, I can see a whole lot of compliance issues here. I can think of a whole lot. I'm reading about a whole lot of regulatory issues. Do you tap dance away from that and offer third-party advice? Or how does that all work? If I'm sitting there thinking of going to the cloud and that's my barrier, I think it's going to be too complicated for me. What do you say? Who wants to take that?
So I'll give one perspective, is that there's an opportunity to improve security and improve compliance using these cloud technologies, because we're moving from a world of manual configuration of 1,000 different stacks to something that's much more template driven, much more policy driven. So you can put together a recipe and spend all your time investing in getting it right once.
So the automation is an opportunity.
Absolutely, and
that's interesting.
And from a surface area perspective, if you think security, it's all about minimizing surface area, and I think the same applies to regulatory compliance, and other areas where you can then, instead of hiring the lawyers 1,000 times to help you think it through.
Reducing surface area, that's a nice.
So Simon Crosby, I think, has a good analogy that there's cloud safe and there's enterprise safe, and it's sort of like driving a car versus flying in a plane. So in the surface area, the miles in a plane is much safer than driving a car around, right? But if you just only ever grow up driving a car, riding in a plane might seem scary. But for the amount of compute time on the surface area, it's going to be safer than probably what the enterprise will be.
Shout out to Simon Crosby. I know he watches these panels, so I don't know what you paid Greg for that, but Lisa.
I think it's, if you're an enterprise user or you're looking at your application from the enterprise perspective, it's the same thing that you would do with any application. You're looking at your chief information security officer to help you and give you guidance on what are the things that we need to do from a security standpoint for this application. If you don't have a chief information security officer, you're going to Cloud Security Alliance for best practices. But then when you go and look at the service provider, you're looking for those basics. Do they have data center security, hypervisor security, network security? And then you can add third-party services on top of that, threat mitigation, DDoS, all the things that you'll put around that web application to make it secure in the cloud. And then, of course, I have to say hybrid cloud. That's the solution where I love shoes. I love shoes, so I'll go browse a website. When I look at those shoes, I know that's sitting in a public cloud somewhere, but when I get ready to do my credit card transaction, that's sitting on a secure database on dedicated infrastructure. So hybrid cloud gives you that flexibility to be able to take the application and decompose it into those parts to make it secure.
So again, you're fired up. This is an advantage,
yes,
this whole configuration.
Absolutely.
Not a disadvantage. Brilliant.
No, I would agree as well. I mean, one of the things that we have seen relative to cloud computing is we've had a number of customers indicate to us that they want to improve their overall security and improve their overall ability to be compliant because of that ability to control and contain where things are running. We had a large bank in Japan that converted their desktop applications, where all the employees are now running from the cloud. Well, why did they do that? The biggest reason was because they had no idea where customer data was leaking. Right? So if they're able to maintain all those desktops in the cloud at that point, then they were able to control and provide that security and compliance around that data. And so I think that's a big key factor. And the whole idea behind hybrid cloud is really a combination of economics, right? And also what makes sense. I mean, it's like renting, leasing, or buying a car. If you're going to put 200,000 miles on your car in the first year, renting or leasing typically doesn't make financial sense. Buying it outright tends to make sense. But at the same time, you're going to have other opportunities when you go to California where you need a car for a day, so you're going to rent it. Well, you have the same thing with cloud, and being able to have those options is the way you go, and that was one of the reasons that IBM made the announcement around wanting to acquire SoftLayer, was that ability to provide greater flexibility of access to those resources they need.
This is a sort of subset of that last question, because I know we'll have a lot of SMB people watching, keeping their eye on Cloud Expo. Is it now time? Obviously it's time, we're going to be saying. But let's help them. Cost and trust are always adduced as the two barriers for SMBs. I'm not quite sure. So it's kind of a subset, but are we really there? Is this an SMB play now as well?
I think it already has been. I think SMB was one of the first markets to adopt the cloud, primarily driven by the cost. And willing to go ahead and take the risks. If there's an outage, then okay, I'll have to take that risk. And the first time the outage occurred, they realized, okay, I'm going to have a backup plan. Right. So then they worked with their provider to set up a backup plan to put that into place so that they didn't have that experience again. But I think the SMB market was one of the first to gravitate to it for that reason. And then secondly, because it really grew up out of consumer access to IT resources and wanting to be able to access it in a similar way.
Well, it's interesting. We're actually seeing small businesses that are dealing with incredibly large data.
Absolutely.
So these are companies you've never heard of that have petabytes and petabytes of data. And if you already have a lot of big data, like many of these large organizations, there's a data gravity problem. It's hard to move it across the pipes. It's hard to do that. And so you probably are going to look at a private cloud, hybrid cloud kind of approach. If you're just starting out from scratch and you're not sure how fast you're going to grow, then that's an attractive place to start in the cloud, because instead of having to scramble to add servers just in time, you can just flick a switch and get access to them. So that the data growth and the speed of change are really attractive, especially at a small scale where you're not sure it could grow by 10x overnight. And so for a lot of those types of businesses, we see some of them get very large very quickly, and we're powering a lot of those clouds, and then sometimes they graduate and say, hey, for this application I'm going to run it and own it myself. For these other ones I'm going to incubate them or start them out in the cloud or leave them there. So there's a lot more choice for the businesses, and that's important in a world of a lot of change.
I think
it would seem like SMB would be uniquely suited to go to the cloud, in that the cost for sysadmins for most SMB to support X amount of machines might be one sysadmin for 400 machines, and then in the clouds they can support thousands or tens of thousands of machines. So that amortization and that one resource really spread out for scale really allows that cost savings that SMB sort of has to pay even more for to hire that expertise. Yeah. When Lisa went through all the lists of all the different types of security that you would have to check, and if you had to hire an expert for each one, and it was over 100 or 200 machines, it's just very expensive for an SMB to run their own infrastructure these days compared to what a cloud can offer. Lisa.
I'm going to take a different angle. So I'm going to look at it from the perspective of a startup, bunch of developer geeks that want to get together and write an application. They don't want to go secure a data center. They want to be able to have services available to them, APIs, SDKs, go develop that application fast, get it out there, get the funding so they can keep on going. So that's I think the innovation around SMBs for the startup is really about being able to have those services available to you, get your application out there fast.
Right. So everybody, you see, this is interesting. The takeaway from this is we've got energetic startup sector. You're all saying SMB is absolutely huge driver of this. So if for any reason you're an SMB and you're not yet sorted, you need to get onto these guys and fast, right? That was the other thing we didn't mention, that the Gelsinger wave did also contain this element of threat, that if you didn't ride the fifth wave, you would be swept away. Not drowned, but just swept away. Do we agree with that?
Well, think of it this way. You've got Company A and Company B. Data is growing 50% a year on average. In many companies, it's doubling. Yeah. So if you have Company A that sticks with their old same boxes, the same old vendors, same old processes, Company B can handle 10x the data for the same budget and the same number of employees. Who wins? Right? So this has now gone from being a cost center for how do you drive cost out or make things a little bit more convenient for the IT staff. This has turned into something that's a fundamental competitive advantage. And you look at some of the companies that have done a great job with using this, look at Google and some of the other web companies, they've really specialized in how do we get more out of a given set of resources, and how do we make that a fundamental advantage for processing big data, for offering new services. I think that is going to become the shift, going from IT being a cost center to being a fundamental weapon for competition.
Now you've mentioned big data, Kevin, so let's maybe just stop up a moment and try and place this for people watching into the greater scheme of things. Big data on everybody's lips. Let's not discuss the different definitions, but what is the interplay between big data and cloud? I mean, Kevin's saying quite rightly, it's beautiful. Cloud sets you up, I'm paraphrasing, sets you up to be able to exploit your big data potential in a way that your old architecture simply wouldn't. So that to me seems a pretty compelling case for, but I'm not in the cloud yet, so I need to.
Yeah, but you have that both from the infrastructure standpoint, right? Because big data is collecting massive volumes of small bits of data, or collecting large pieces of very large volumes of data that you have to go through well. And that's where the cloud infrastructure provides you that support to handle that scalability, handle that growth. But you've got to have the application side of it as well, right? The ability to analyze and then take action off of it.
You're not just collecting for the sake of it.
You're not collecting for the sake of collecting. And I think that's where IBM's focus in that information management space has been. How do we take that from a big data standpoint and rapidly turn that into responsiveness? And Watson was a great demonstration of doing that. But the idea is, literally as from a retailer standpoint, reaching out to their customers, they can reach them instantly wherever they are, knowing what they're doing and how they're doing it, and being able to be responsive to them. I mean, that's one example of taking that big data, running the real-time analytics. But it's infecting other areas as well. For example, we have a large manufacturer who is looking at big data across all of their multiple plants, multiple sites, real-time data analytics, and analyzing that and being able to make minute adjustments in parts placements, in paint colors, and all the different things that they're doing based upon the real-time analytics, if you will, of what's coming in. And I think the cloud is what provides them the resources from an infrastructure standpoint to deliver that.
Well, Lisa had talked about innovation, and I completely agree with her because I draw an analogy to the telcos and voice. Remember when minutes cost a lot and the price just came down, down, down? It was a race to the bottom. Right. Everyone built out big infrastructures and the prices all went to marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And so the problem that you have with the cloud is that it's great to go build the infrastructure, but you then have to add the services back, like voicemail, call forwarding, three-way calling, friends and family. These are software. These are innovative packaging of the resources, and these become the ways that, whether it's the private or public cloud, that you get the leverage out of all of that liquid, programmable infrastructure. And I think that this is, that next wave which will come. First is, can you handle these massive, very dynamic sets of infrastructure and application environments? But then, can you innovate? Can you make it very easy for people to spin up those new value-added services that they can differentiate and they can go tackle segments with?
And Bruce made this very good distinction of just making sure that you add analytics to that phrase, so we don't just say big data. It's the analytical side of it.
And it's the action from the analytics, right? Analytics that are driving actionable events, right, that are going to have a dynamic change to the business and how the business is accomplished.
Right. So again, people following along, it's not big data in and of itself, is what we then do.
Yeah, I think the intersection is big data and cloud. Cloud just is really providing that platform for unlimited compute resources. So as much as you need, it's available to you, and then when you don't need it, you spin that all down. So CERN is using OpenStack now to go solve the mysteries of the universe, and they're spinning up 150,000 VMs to be able to go and solve the mysteries of the universe using OpenStack as that foundation, that cloud's compute service.
Well, we know it all began at CERN, so it's good that it's coming back.
So cloud answers the how, and then it's up to the business to decide the what, right? Do I need analytics to drive and have a better competitive advantage? So I think as the cloud matures, there becomes this new genre of analytics or big data. With SMB, there becomes the what do they need for competitive advantage, right? And whether you actually get swept away, that sort of there's still mainframes out there running, right? And someone predicted that those would end 20 years ago. So I think it's figuring out how to leverage the how to answer the what, and then use cloud to fulfill that.
And you see, you guys you never flinch on buzzwords, I know. So obviously we've just nailed big data. We've started with cloud. So we couldn't possibly leave people without looking at SMAC, looking at social, mobile, our analytics, and our cloud. Now, is SMAC going to be the thing, or is that just analysts? Acronym speak.
It's not analysts, it's not acronym speak. I mean, it really is cloud infrastructure, right? Analytics is collection of the data and what you do with it. Mobile is how do you get the information out to the people, to the end users that need it quickly, and social is how do they then interact amongst themselves, and then how do you turn that into analytics? So what cloud resources do you need? I mean, it's not buzzwords. It is in fact the direction we're already living today. It's not that we're going there, we're there now.
There.
Right, and how do we drive that and how do we adopt it? And that's really, again, if I go back to my analogy, people don't care about the computer, they care about what it can do for them, right? And how it can get it to them as quickly as possible so they can make decisions.
Lisa, you agree? Are we already SMAC heads, all of us?
I think the interesting thing about pulling in the social aspect here is we've been on mobile, we've done some sort of analytics, but I think it's mining the customer population maybe in a little bit different way. So very rapidly through big data, being able to crunch some numbers, some data, be able to come back out very quickly with a social gaming or social media to be able to target your audience in a different way. And so I think it is the smack down, if you will.
So in previous generations, there was Jeffrey Moore and Crossing the Chasm, and you would build up a business and get enough people, and then all of a sudden you'd have to get that shining big customer, right? And with SMAC, there's no sort of chasm. Like if you look at Facebook or Twitter, it just has grown tremendously fast, and there's been no chasm. And you could think that a lot of cloud computing and the infrastructure behind it, you wouldn't have to raise so much money to buy all your equipment. You can sort of pay as you go. So it really sort of shrinks that chasm, I think, for a lot of those types of applications down to nothing.
Well, think 10 years ago or 15 years ago when IT meant, hey, let's set up a big box and we're going to put a database on it and we'll do our accounting or maybe our CRM on it. And that was IT. And today, 10 years later, look how many new axes of innovation and of change, and they're all putting tremendous strain on those old models of how you would stand up and deliver IT. So social, mobile, all of these are very dynamic. They can grow and shrink, they can move in different directions, and now because there's so many end users, so many touch points, now the analytics turn into an opportunity to really get more out of them. Can you, harness the crowd? Can you help them get to each other? Can you, learn the trends earlier than your competitors and get a jump on things? And we work with a lot of our customers that are really innovating in the ways to use these. We have one of our customers who just went public, Shutterstock. They do 700 software releases a month. For their site, and they drove their growth rate by constantly looking at every small piece of how customers are interacting with their site, and they're using us to help the big back-end Hadoop and how do you tie that into the web service. But that constant introspection, and that's an extreme version of like literally 2, 3, 4 times a day, going and tweaking things and getting smarter and smarter. So that's the new pace of evolution, I think.
And something Kevin mentions brought thought to my mind, which is we have a social platform that we recently stood up on our IBM Smart Cloud Services, and they had a new campaign, had a new event occur, and suddenly saw 400% growth in 1 month, right? Which, as the IT infrastructure provider guy, you go, oh, whoa, okay, what do we got to do to plan for the future? Well, that's where analytics also works inside how we manage our own business, right? We run our own analytics on a constant, continuous basis, and we're out there to help other cloud providers do the same thing so that they can anticipate that growth to be able to provide for the infrastructure growth needed to support their end user customers that are experiencing this level. So analytics is used out there with the consumers and how they use it, but as providers, right, we have to use it as well to be able to support our customers.
So I like your idea that SMAC is like, it's there, again, just like cloud, just like big data. So it's a question of doing something with it. But I bet we haven't covered everything. We're kind of getting out of time. So I just want to play back to you the fact that Peter Drucker, I'm a great fan of Peter Drucker, once said, your job as a business leader, and you're all business leaders, is not to provide right answers. It's to provide the right questions. So we've tried as hard as we can, but Jeremy isn't the fount of all wisdom. So what have we missed? What is the one question, let's leave viewers with this, what is the one question we've not covered on this panel that they need to be bearing in mind, and maybe when they're at Cloud Expo trying to find the answers to those questions? Who would like to lead off on that? What have we missed, Kevin?
I think a question that's we're really seeing in our customer base, and we ask ourselves is, how long are end users going to put up with waiting 10 weeks to stand up their old IT? Right? I think that there's a patience that's wearing thin. There's a consumerization wave that is going to really change the way that people are thinking about building their IT and deploying those services. I think that pressure is building. And so the question is, when does it break in your company, and when does it break for the industry as a whole? We're seeing a lot of disruption, a lot of people that are thinking it's real soon.
I like that. Next, please.
I'll go next. So I think the thing to miss is if you're in the IT organization and you're the infrastructure guy in IT, you've got to really be thinking about cloud. If you're not already, you're probably already too late. Your end users are already coming to companies like Rackspace, and because you can't provide the services to them as fast as they need it. So I think the thing here is really thinking about those applications and really thinking as an IT organization like a service provider. You're providing a service to your business units to be able to get faster time to market, realize revenue faster. If you're not on board, you better get on board, because you'll be gone, because they'll all come to Rackspace.
Well, and if it's not your end users that are shipping, it's certainly your competition.
Yes.
Right, from that perspective. I think the big question to be asking themselves is if it really is about your processes and then the applications that support those processes, what are you doing right now today to understand what's the landscape pattern you have that's needed to support that application, and then how mobile is that pattern for me, right? And that's the big focus from IBM, is at that application pattern level. The more we understand and able to abstract that application and all its associated piece parts as it relates to high availability, security, resiliency, the easier it becomes now for me to be able to stand that up in a traditional, a hybrid, or a public cloud based upon the attributes of what I need to be able to deliver it, and then it becomes mobile. And so, you know, what do your applications and those associated landscape patterns look like today?
It's a good question.
The question the enterprise has to be asking is, what is its core competency, and how can it focus in on its core competency? So, for example, we had a customer, Pabst Blue Ribbon, who moved to Rackspace because their core competency is beer and marketing the beer, right? And that really running IT, they picked up those old apps, moved into Rackspace, and now that frees them up to move faster and really focus in on their core competency.
Good example.
Fanatical beer.
Fanatical beer.
So there are the questions we may have missed. I want to thank all of you on behalf of people watching this out there on the World Wide Web. Let's say our thanks to Kevin Brown, CEO of Coraid, to Greg O'Connor, CEO of AppZero, to Lisa Larson, VP of Enterprise Cloud Solutions at Rackspace, and last but absolutely not least, the director of the IBM Smart Cloud Platform, Bruce Otte. Thank you so much. Thank you all, and thank you for watching this out there on the World Wide Web.